welcome to WCTV Sports and the show called Off the Court. I'm Paul Geigle. This is season number 3 for us here, and actually a second preseason special, which we started last season. And with me again on this voyage for Off the Court and our preseason special is my friend Harry Irving. And Harry, welcome again, welcome back. And before we start in, you've got a little thing you want to say about a friend of yours.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much for being here, for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'm wearing my Cap Sports shirt today in honor of my very good friend and broadcast partner, Carl Pratt, who tragically died a couple of weeks ago. We did many memorable Wareham High School basketball games over the years, along with a lot of other local communities. And no one was more enthusiastic about high school sports, youth sports than Carl. It was always this time of year with the Super Bowls coming that we'd be getting ready for our first broadcasts, and we'd always welcome the warm gymnasium packed with spectators that were there supporting their schools and so forth. And I'll dearly miss him, and I'll look forward to you guys' continued broadcasts of high school sports. Hopefully people watching this will support this school, support, high school basketball, boys and girls. It's a great thing, a great way to spend evenings in the winter, and it's great for our town here.
I know, and I met you 3 years ago, and we've been talking about games, not only South Coast Conference games, but non-conference games that have been spectacular, Division III, Division II, whenever we can get away and watch them. And you and I share text messages back and forth with scores, and I agree, it's just a tremendous way to get out of the house and support these kids.
Yep.
But Harry, let's get right into our show today. And before we start prognosticating about Division III, especially the South Coast Conference, let's talk about the surprising news we got several weeks ago this summer when Coach Kevin Bijoli stepped down as head coach of Wareham High School. He's a friend of yours, and you were teammates together.
Teammates together. Yeah. Kevin and I were teammates back in the late 70s. It was a big surprise to a lot of people because they knew about his passion for the game of basketball, particularly for basketball here in Wareham. Going back to being a ball boy, a player, an assistant coach, and finally getting his shot as head coach here at Wareham, and culminating with not only over 300 wins, which I think may have been done faster than anybody in Massachusetts has ever done it, but a state championship in 2010. And he had a brilliant career. He's an administrator over at Old Rochester, and I think those duties have kind of
you were taxing on him, right?
Very taxing. He missed a game last year.
Yeah.
That didn't sit well with him at all. But he had a great run here, and he will leave a mark permanently here for what he accomplished as basketball coach here at Wareham.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, his father coached for 25 years here, 400 wins.
400 wins.
Kevin was on the bench with his father as an assistant for what, seven of those seasons? The last 7 that his father coached?
Oh no, he was on much longer than that. He was on the bench for 13 years. Which kind of was, if anyone knows the story, he wasn't hired the first year his father retired. And that's what makes it so nice to see Stephen Faneuil get an opportunity as Kevin's longtime assistant, former player here in Wareham, and now taking the reins over and trying to continue the tradition of Wareham basketball, a winning tradition of Wareham basketball.
Yeah, Harry makes a point. Steve Faneuil, the longtime assistant to Coach Bijoli, and running the JV program very successfully in developing these kids. As a matter of fact, as we get into the team this year that he's going to be taking over from Kevin, a lot of these kids played for him on that undefeated season he had 2 years ago. They were 17-0, I think, incredible. But they've got some work to do this year because it's very competitive in the South Coast Conference this year, as you and I both know. But yeah, let's get right into the Wareham team. We've got Javon Thomas coming back, very talented kid. We saw him play as a freshman all the way up, and as good as he's going to play, as he's going to carry Wareham as far as they're going to take him.
He will. He's
Yeah.
he's a very gifted player offensively. He's going to have to do a little bit more this year defensively, rebounding, defending. I'm sure most teams are going to look to game plan around him because he's very capable, as you saw last year as a sophomore, of scoring 30-plus points. The state tournament game here against the Vineyard,
It was awesome, wasn't it?
it was unbelievable. A shooting display like you could never imagine. He's going to have to stay out of foul trouble, and teams are really going to have to. Teams are going to game plan around stopping Javon. He's that talented offensively.
Yeah, that's a good point, Harry, because I saw a lot of the summer league games here. I think it's the Old Colony League, they call it, over at Apponequet. And we saw some of these teams already, that was their game plan, to double team Jovan, make it tough on him. And already he was showing he was trying to do too much. So, and Coach Faniel was there, so I'm sure he's going to try to tell him to trust his teammates. I think who we didn't see last year is a guy who hasn't played a lot of basketball for him. He's a big football player, Josh Onuchiogo. He's a senior this year. I think he's going to help Jovan up front. He's about 6'2". He's very, very physical, and he gets some offensive rebounds and take a little of the pressure off of Jovan.
He made the most. He made the most of his minutes last year when he was called upon. Waham's had this almost affliction of never having a big man. Even when they won the state championship, their center was Ryan Pena. He was about 6'3". Josh is going to have to really be a force this year on the backboards. I'm sure Coach Faniel's still going to want to use that up-tempo running style, and that always starts with rebounding.
Right.
And you cannot run if you cannot rebound.
You gotta get the
So
ball.
very, very important that that Josh contributes on the backboards. Maybe chipping with some points with putbacks and so forth. And that's why I mentioned earlier, Javon's going to have to step up in that regard too, in terms of defensive rebounding and so forth. But Josh is going to be a key player and is one of the few returnees this year.
Right.
Off of a very successful team last year that was, 3 losses to the state champion, Old Rochester.
Right.
And no doubt in my mind, Wareham last year, had they gotten by Old Rochester, would have won the state championship again.
And Wareham was only one of 2 teams to beat Sandwich last year. Amazing.
Yep.
Sandwich lost to Wareham earlier in the season and to Oliver Ames in the Division II sectional South semifinal, I think it was, right? And the other kid has got some playing time is in the backcourt is Marquis Silver, another football player, very physical. He's not a great shooter, but to take care of the basketball, I think, is going to be very important. I think that's going to be Steve's Achilles heel, is finding someone to control that basketball and hold on to it and not turning it over. He's got 4 talented kids back there, but who's going to be in the mix,
Right.
we have no idea.
High school basketball, and even college basketball to a degree, your success is determined so much by your backcourt and by your point guard.
Yes.
And we've seen it here with Wareham. They've had such a great run of great guards here that were ball handlers, that were shooters, that were distributors, and they have a nice collection here. These kids that are really getting their first taste of the varsity and so forth are gonna have to step up and be able to handle pressure from other teams.
Big time, yes.
Teams now are going to look to pressure Wareham because they don't have that experienced point guard, and that can spell trouble for you if you can't break the press, and if you can't distribute the ball to the open man when your star player is double teamed and so forth.
You're smart enough to handle that trap when it comes too, and you know it's going to come. And speaking of guards, important guards, let's get into Old Rochester, the defending champions in Division III, who had an amazing run last year. Ran the table, amazing, 20-0. And they lost their point guard, Noah Fernandez, young freshman last year, was just outstanding. He's going to Tabor. So right now, OR is looking for someone in the backcourt that's going to take over as a field general. And is that going to be the Midwood kid, Mitch Midwood? Is that
No,
you don't think?
Mitch was a senior last
Oh,
year
Mitch was
for
a senior.
OR. Yep. I think they're kind of in search of a point guard
Yeah.
right now. They're obviously the defending state champions. They lost 2 seniors that were contributors, so they've got a lot back. But the loss of Noah, who is a Wareham native and moved out to Mattapoisett as an elementary school kid, it's going to be the same like we just talked about. Teams will look to pressure them, where last year when teams pressured Old Rochester, Noah was able to just slice them up and was really what made them go last year.
Yeah, that was a key factor, how poised he was for a freshman, Harry. And the other kid that impressed me was the sophomore, was the big guy, Matt Bales. I think he absolutely killed Wareham, and especially in that game in Durfee, where Wareham would make a run, come back within 1 or 2, and that kid would just come and get an offensive rebound, put back in, go back up again.
And there you saw the difference of having a quality 6'6" center that could rebound, block shots, and provide something offensively for the Bulldogs. They're going to be very tough again this year. It's going to be interesting to see what the backcourt situation is without Noah there.
But up front, they're set. They got the 2 Santos brothers.
They've got the
Will Santos, which is a terrific player.
Yep.
He's incredible. And so they're going to be in the mix. But I think the team that you and I have already talked about in the offseason that has got 2 transfers is Bourne High School. They got 3 of their kids who have been playing together since freshman year. They got Davis, Parker Friedman, and of course the coach's son, Jacob Ashworth, who's probably going to be the top scorer in the conference, in my opinion.
He very well could be. Again, teams are going to really look to stop him. He's on pace to score 1,000 points this year as a junior, something that doesn't happen too often. We get back to the point guard talk. They had a very good freshman point guard last year, a kid by the name of Dave Laney. I know down in Bourne, when Bourne beat Wareham last year, and that hasn't happened often over the years. I mean, you can go back and look over the past, over Coach Bajoli's career, how many games he won and lost against Bourne. They have a freshman point guard who's a sophomore this year, 1 year older, 1 year better, who's a real looks to distribute first, then score. And boy, that really helps with the success of your team when you have that point guard who's trying to get everyone else points.
That was a great game, Harry. It was a 2-point game.
Sure was.
Wareham had a chance to win it. They had a turnover at the end, gave the ball back to Bourne, and Bourne won in a big upset. If you want to call it an upset, it was a great basketball game.
There weren't a lot of games. There weren't a lot of games Wareham was out of last year. The 3 losses to Old Rochester, none of them were by more than 4 points. It's going to be hard to match that effort from last year with this year's team, with new faces and so forth, but hopefully they'll be up for the task.
I remember talking to Kevin after that loss, and he was shocked or surprised, as everybody was, at how fast that Laney kid was bringing the ball up. He had to make adjustments, and they had to put some pressure on that kid because they were getting too many easy baskets on fast break, and that's not like a Bajoli team, defensive team, letting baskets like that happen. So adjustment was made, and it was a terrific basketball game.
Bourne, you did mention transfers. Yeah. They got a big pivot man that transferred there from Nauset, so they are going to have someone in the middle with some good size, 6'5", 6'6"
Yeah,
kid.
I saw one of them. I didn't see the other kid.
Defensive rebounder. And it's funny, teams that we're talking about here, OR and Bourne, those of us that have watched Wareham used to be shocked when they would try to do what Wareham did, which is run up and down the court, fast break basketball. It used to play right into Wareham's hands. Well, now they're doing it, and they're becoming successful at it because they've got the type of athletes that can get up and down the court and be up-tempo, and it's going to make for a real great season here in the conference and in the Division III South tournament.
And the other kid I saw this summertime in the mix with the Bourne kids, Bourne had 2 teams in the summer league, so did Old Rochester. Saw both those teams. Was the Johnson boy. Is that Travis Johnson?
Travis Johnson's a senior.
He really improved from what I saw this summertime. And I was watching both of those kids out there, because Jacob Ashworth was gone for the summer. He was in Las Vegas or Nevada somewhere at a basketball camp or whatever.
AAU basketball,
yeah. And he really impressed me, Harry. He's gonna give the Laney kid a run for his money, I think.
Travis is one of those kids. His dad's a middle school teacher here in Wareham, Dr. J, Tom Johnson, we call him. We love Dr. J. And he's one of those kids who's been in Bourne's program, like these Wareham kids who haven't seen a lot of varsity time. Well, now you're a senior, and you're going to be called upon to provide quality minutes, whether it's in a starting role or off the bench. But that's what makes a difference in the success of your team, is how everyone comes together and knows their role and plays well, and when they're called upon. And
chemistry is really important, isn't
very
it, Harry?
important. Yep.
We saw that with Old Rochester last year, as we were talking earlier. They had some trouble with a player, and he dropped off the team, and after that, that team took off. It's like, it made a whole big difference from what we saw last year with that same player.
It was a great run for them, and like we alluded to earlier in this broadcast, if you could have seen the way the three towns came together for that basketball team through the tournament, at all their tournament games, at the semifinal game at Taunton, at the Eastern Mass final in the Garden, I think they took something like 15 fan buses from their schools. They dismissed their elementary and middle schools early, and those three towns really rallied around that team, and it culminated in a state championship. And it was a pretty exciting thing to see, and I'm a big fan of Coach Cavallo's over there at OR, and I was very happy to see him. Would have preferred that Kevin won it, but I was happy.
Anybody else?
I was happy for Steve.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we got one more team. Harry and I last year put the categories of the South Coast Conference into two tiers, top tier and a bottom tier. So we're talking about the elite tier right now, in our opinion. We got one more team that I saw and talked to Harry about this summer. It was Apponequet High School. And they were 11-11 overall last year. They got into the tournament. They lost out to Abington in the first round. They had a couple of big guys. One guy couldn't get on the basketball court. That was the Anderson kid. And Faleki had to do it all for him. But there's some talented kids on that team coming back here. Two football players that you know.
Yeah, and I've seen them play a couple of times. One of them with some Wareham roots here, and that's Chad Goucher. His dad, Chad, was just named to the top 20 Wareham football players of the last 50 years. Was a member of the '95 Super Bowl team that just got inducted into the Wareham High School Athletic Hall of Fame. Chad's a super athlete, quarterback on the football team for Apponequet this past year. And his main target, Pinto, is a kid that's going to really make some noise this year in basketball. He's a big, strong, talented athlete. And Apponequet's going to be tough this year for teams.
Yeah, they won the Old Colony Summer League. They surprised everybody. They were. I saw them play twice. They were outstanding. And Harry just mentioned Goucher's a tremendous player. And Pinto really impressed me. He's 6'1". He's very solid. He shoots well. He can slash to the basket. He's unafraid. He can go up against the big men underneath the boards. And they got a couple of other guys too. Dylan Thomas, I think his name is. Dylan Sheedy, and another kid, Chad Willett. So they're going to be tough. They got 4 kids in the top starting 5. So here's our top 4 here, Harry. Give me your selection. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here, Paul.
Well, I'll give you mine first. If
Just looking at what the teams have coming back and so forth, with the loss of Noah Fernandez for OR, I'm going to have to say Bourne would probably be my top choice. Basically, everyone coming back. Super player in Jacob Ashworth, very good point guard, very well coached. Scott's another guy, Scott Ashworth, who I just think is a great guy and does a great job over at Bourne. We're blessed around here to have these surrounding towns
Scott's a motivator too,
with these great rivalries. But I'd put Bourne first. I still think OR is going to be a team to beat if they can solidify their point guard spot. There are a couple of kids from Wareham over there on school choice who may be able to step in and play some point guard for them. I'm not discounting Wareham at all. I think Wareham is always going to be in the mix. because of their system. Stephen Faneuil does a great job, X's and O's, and I've been around the program a lot. He does at the JV level, and when he was freshman coach at the freshman level, what the varsity does. So these kids know when they come up, they know the press, they know the offensive sets, they know the out-of-bounds plays. So Wareham may actually surprise some teams this year. I'd go with either them or Apponequet for the third spot. And who knows, maybe they can surprise some teams.
What's going to hurt Apponequet, Harry, is the height, you know. Even though Wareham can't match the height of Old Rochester and Bourne, they still got guys underneath that can handle the job. But that's going to be tough to see Apponequet in the mix here, because I see Old Rochester and Bourne splitting. You know what I mean? But the thing is, Old Rochester's got to play Dartmouth High School later on. They're going to be good this year. They're Division II, but they're on the schedule. That could be a loss for Old Rochester, and that could be the one that separates who's on top and who's going to be
and why you do that is to prepare your team for the state tournament run. You know, you play your 16 games in the conference. The state now allows you to play 22 games if you so choose. I know that OR's also going out, just like Wareham, and playing Stang. Wareham's playing another team we'll talk about later in Spelman. So you do want to play. Wareham in the past has played New Bedford, Brockton, East Boston, North Quincy. You know, last year they played Sandwich, and like you said, they gave Sandwich one of their only 2 losses of the year. So yeah, playing a beefed up schedule is a good thing.
Yeah. So let's get into the second tier here, Harry. We've got Dighton, Rehoboth, Greater New Bedford, Volk, Fairhaven, Case, and Seekonk. I think the bottom 2 are going to be Case and Seekonk. Coach Plant back there at Case is really, his talent has diminished. We don't know. We may have gotten some transfers in from what I saw last year. Seekonk and Case are going to be struggling again this year. Fairhaven had a pretty good, decent season last year for Phil Harding. He was 10-9, and he's got Josh Nunes coming back, and Cabral, and a kid called Colton Fitzsimmons. Cam Charette is gone. He was awesome.
Yep. Cam was a great player at Fairhaven. 1,000-point scorer. Fairhaven always gives you fits. Twice Fairhaven ended 44-game win streaks that Wareham had in the South Coast Conference. The record is 44 games. It was set by Apponequet. Wareham has tied it twice, and both times they were beaten by Fairhaven to not get the 45th win. What they do there is, it's the same thing year after year after year. Man-to-man defense, no fast break, try to keep the scores as low as possible, keep the game close, and hope the other team has a bad shooting night and you have a good shooting night, and you go over to that gymnasium. I don't even know how you guys film over there. I think that the gym must seat about 400 people. If you're not there for the freshman game, you don't get a seat.
We're in a little corner somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know, the team I'm really perplexed about is Greater New Bedford Volk Boomers team. They got one really good team player coming back, Jordan Rose Wheatley, who was a terrific player as a junior last year. He was their big scorer. They lost a lot of seniors. Who knows? Boomer's a good coach. He gets the best out of his guys, and we'll see. The team I think that's going to surprise this year, this is my sleeper, Dighton Rehoboth. They got 4 decent players. A little guy, his name is Nick Koneski. He's only about 5'8", 5'9", but he's like the Laney kid. He's lightning fast. He runs around the court, and he gave Wareham fits last year. And they kept the score down for a while before Wareham finally got control of the basketball game and put it away. So Dighton Rehoboth, there's my sleeper. I'm going to have them at 5, so in the next bottom tier. So,
let me go back to New Bedford Volk quickly. A lot of bad blood last year between Wareham and Volk. There was a really hard foul on Javon Thomas by one of the Volk players. Javon ended up being carried off the court. There were words exchanged after the game. I mean, it got pretty.
Nasty.
It got pretty nasty, and that's going to be interesting to see when those two teams meet this year. Boomer Rodericks has been at Volk. I always say since I went to Wareham High School 30 years ago. He's always coached 3 sports there. He's an institution over there. He got the head job when Rob Pimentel stepped down, and he has his kids play hard.
Yes,
and
very
like
aggressive.
and like I say, I think that could be interesting, an interesting dynamic with Wareham this year. Dayton Rehoboth is coached by Bill Culpitson. He's been there forever. I think he's now the longest tenured coach in the conference. That now that Kevin's left, he's also the baseball coach at OR, where he's won like 400 something games. The Konecki kid you mentioned comes from a long line of Koneskis from Dayton Rehoboth that are super athletes. And if you get these starters back, they mature, they've played in the off season, they've gotten bigger, stronger, and you can plug some other kids in, then maybe you can elevate yourself to that top tier. But it's going to be hard beating Bourne, Wareham, O'Hara, and Apponequet.
Perennial favorites always in the South Coast Conference.
Yep.
Okay, let's get out of the South Coast Conference, and we're going to stay in Division 3, because Wareham on their schedule this year have got 2 teams. One is Bishop Stang, right, and Spelman. We'll talk about Stang first. We had them on the schedule last year for 2 games. We split the games home and away. Terrific games. They had Bryson Goodine. Is he coming back this year? Freshman from Wareham.
No, Bryson's actually from New Bedford.
New Bedford.
He was a star last year as a freshman. He's a big. It was almost like last year was the year of freshman point guards. You had Noah at OR, Dave Laney at Bourne, and Bryson Goodine at Stang, who is a 6'3" dunking machine, and he's a point guard. He had a knee injury last year that required surgery.
That's a shame.
With most great players now, when you're that good, that young, the prep school talk starts, and so forth. There's some question about whether or not he's going to be ready for the season. The coach over at Stang is a Wareham guy, Colby Santos. Colby was on the Eastern Mass final team back in 2001. Ended up going to prep school himself. Played Division I basketball at UNH, and did a great job with Stang last year. The game between Wareham and Stang over at Stang was a classic. Wareham came back from a 20-point deficit to tie the game and ended up losing by 2. It was, and this is what I talk about high school basketball. It was a Saturday afternoon in either late December or early January. It was 25 degrees out. You couldn't have put another person in that gym.
That's the classic gymnasium too.
It is. It's the Catholic school gymnasium with the band, well, with the stage at the end. And I know you're a big fan of the rock band they have performing.
Classic rock.
And it's funny, on my way in today, I was so happy to see a flyer out in the hall that talked about a pep band for the basketball team. I think it would be a great addition here. I think Colby's going to do great things at Stang for their basketball program. There's a very talented freshman from Wareham named Jordan Lopes, who's at Stang this year. Whether or not he gets minutes or is involved, it gets in the mix, we'll find out soon enough, because Wareham opens the season against Bishop Stang this year, and then plays Bourne in their second game. So two really tough tests for Coach Faneuil and Wareham right from the get-go.
Yeah, Stang was a little disappointing last year. They had injuries like Bryson Goodine. The kid Desmond Johnson was another terrific player. Couldn't stay on the court with injuries. So they struggled. 5 and 8. They should have been 8 and 5 if they were healthy. But they play a tough schedule. And so Stang is on the schedule. We're going to be home and away against them. The other game, home and away, is a team we beat twice last year, and I was surprised. I thought we split last year, but Wareham played terrific against Coach Perry's Cardinals over at Cardinal Spelman, and they're very talented. And I think they underachieved. Last year they were 9 and 11. They lost some really tough games. They have a tough schedule. They lost to Marshfield, to Burlington, 2-point games, 1-point games, and they didn't make the playoffs for the first time in a while, which is unlike a Coach Perry team.
They play in a very competitive conference, which is the Catholic Central Large.
Large, okay.
Catholic Central Large. It consists of Arlington Catholic, St. Mary's, Bishop Fenwick. I mean, St. Mary's was Division IV state champion many times. Arlington Catholic's been Division III state champion. Cardinal Spellman has been Division III state champion recently, within the last couple of years. They were disappointing last year, but it's another place you go. And I was at the game, the Wareham game at Spellman, and boy, Wareham played super that day. It's a real hard place to play. And to quote Gene Hackman, it's a bandbox of a gymnasium. There's no room on the sidelines for the out of bounds plays, and when they get it rocking over there, it's a real hard place to play. They've been very successful. I know that game's on January 2nd. It's a Saturday afternoon.
And I can't be there.
At Spellman, and it's gonna again, Wareham early on in the season is going to have some real tests, and that doesn't even include Old Rochester.
Yeah.
So
Spellman is tough. They're going to be my pick for Division III this year in the South. They're loaded. These kids all played last year. They only lost one senior guard, John Como, and they got two talented freshmen. One kid you really liked last year was, I think his name is Mickey Spencer, who saw a little time. But the guy I think Coach Perry is counting on is the other little guy from Brockton. His name is Jerome Mello. He got a lot of playing time. You saw him out on the floor.
Well, first of all, Coach Perry does an outstanding job. He was just inducted into the Mass State Coaches Hall of Fame. He's won over 400 games at Spellman, 2 state championships. Their other good guy is Real. He's the quarterback of coming off a really successful.
He was a transfer last year.
Transferred from South Shore Vogue, came in, struggled a little bit. I think going from South Shore Vogue up to the level Spellman plays was a bit of an adjustment for him. I saw him play football this year. He had a great football season.
Great athlete.
Nick George.
Right. We saw him on the championship team 2 years ago.
He's a super athlete. So they're going to be tough, and that's we talk about circling games before the season. That's one that I absolutely don't want to miss, and that's Wareham at Spellman on a Saturday afternoon, January 2nd.
Right. And at the end of the year, I think we finished with Spellman too.
Yes.
Here at Bajoli Gym, and a couple other players. Another Brockton kid that Spellman's got is Dimitri St. Louis, who actually killed Wareham. He was scored in double figures every game he played against Wareham. He's tough under the boards, although he's a small forward. He's still a great putback guy. And the guy who played, the second guy who played on that championship team, Colin Sullivan, who's a big guy. He's about 6'2", 6'3", very physical. Yep. So they've got experience, and they're loaded. And that's my pick for Division III this year. I hope I don't jinx Coach Perry.
Well, I think we were in agreement last year that they were going to be one of the better teams in the South. They struggled a little bit didn't get in the tournament.
Yeah.
I think it could be different this year for them.
Yeah, I think so too. But anyway, Harry, that's about it for this portion of or this episode of Off the Court. Thank you for coming in, Harry.
My pleasure.
And we'll be talking down the line a little more as the games go along. And as a matter of fact, right down the hallway in a couple of hours, the first practice of the year is going to be. So. Basketball is here, really. So, for Christian Fernandez, our director and producer, I'm Paul Geigle. Thanks again, Harry Irving, for coming in and watching. And stay tuned again. In another week, we'll see another episode of the show we call Off the Court.